Virginia will make history later today. Why? It's the first ever black Speaker of the House is sworn in at the state capitol in Richmond. Democrat Don Scott is his name. He's a U.S. Navy veteran and a lawyer who turned to politics a few years ago, defying expectations and overcoming some pretty big hurdles. That's because the man that the Democrats have chosen to lead the assembly was once a federal prison inmate. He shared his story with Scott MacFarlane. Scott, good morning. Can't wait to hear this story.
Hey, Gayle, for Virginia leaders, there's a unique history and tradition. They refer to their legislature as the oldest deliberative lawmaking body in the world. But for the new Speaker of the House, he's anything but traditional.
Inside Virginia's capital, which was designed by Thomas Jefferson himself 3 centuries ago, it's Don Scott who'll now be in charge. A remarkable accomplishment for Virginia's next Speaker of the House, who served nearly 8 years in a federal prison.
I made the dreadful mistake of going to pick up some money, some drug money, in Mobile, Alabama.
Scott pleaded guilty in the 1990s in a drug conspiracy case after being arrested in his 20s.
I had never been in any trouble before, and ended up getting a slap, for 10 years. I remember my mother in the courtroom. I can hear the little yelp that she made when the judge said 10 years. I still hear that sometimes.
Scott's reemergence after his release is a story of redemption, but also of an elected leader who's making a uniquely rapid rise, winning the top post in Virginia's General Assembly after just 4 years in the legislature.
Damaged goods sometimes can turn out to be okay. And we're a lot more interesting than the people that followed all the rules and did everything perfect.
He'd already served in the Navy.
I was a little skinny kid.
And was in his 3rd year of law school when he was arrested. Scott says he was newly focused when he returned from prison. He passed the bar exam, opened a law practice, and eventually convinced himself he could win office, despite being an ex-felon.
Like God will, I think he's a great comedian. He will use the people that folks think have nothing to offer and shock the world with them.
Which is why it's so striking that his friends point us to a much different accomplishment.
He laid down his life for me.
Portsmouth, Virginia Judge Johnny Morrison is Scott's neighbor and a mentor.
That's my guy.
In 2021, after Scott's election to office, and a year after Morrison personally oversaw Scott's swearing in, Scott noticed something was wrong.
He was having this issue with his kidney and got to go through dialysis, and he might end up having to come off the bench.
Morrison was in severe pain and his health deteriorating from kidney failure.
It's emotional for me. He said, we have the same blood type, and I'm gonna donate a kidney. I'm gonna donate you a kidney.
How did he receive that news?
I think he was shocked, and I think he was shocked that I was a match, right? I'm your next door neighbor. It's been a blessing to be able to get that gift.
How you doing, Mr. Speaker?
Hey, come on out.
Ever since Morrison helped convince Scott to run, the 58-year-old has had big aspirations and no shortage of confidence, but faces a uniquely tough job. A narrow majority, a governor of the opposing party, and fiercely divisive issues he's targeting, including guns and abortion rights. As he makes history, the moment he's sworn in the one-time capital of the Confederacy.
We're only a few miles from where the first slaves came into this country in 1619. Now, 405 years later, you have your first black speaker. So I'm very cognizant of the shoulders that I stand on. I take it very seriously. And I'm humbled, and I'm grateful for the opportunity.
Don Scott will be sworn in 30 years to the day, or 30 years to the year after his federal criminal case, more than 400 years after the founding of the General Assembly, and Nate, 2 years after they took down a Confederate statue of Robert E. Lee down the street from the same state capitol.
Scott, unbelievable story. Thank you so much. Wow.
Yeah, I don't think we've heard the last of Don Scott. He's going somewhere.
Yeah.
He's going somewhere bigger than I think what he's doing now. Didn't you guys like what he said? Damaged goods can turn out to be okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I say all the time that what you did on your worst day, a bad decision,
yes,
30 years ago, it does not define you. Yes. That's not all you can be or what you will be.
Yeah. You oftentimes say that. You're spot on with that. I mean, he was in law school, made a mistake,
yes,
came back out and finished the job, and then continued to build the rest of his life.
Yeah.
What a story.